Well, I'd like to start off with an easy question, I hope,
Okay.
for the both of you. First album that you bought?
The first album that I remember buying was by request. We asked our parents to buy us REM's Automatic for the People. Before that, we'd just been like into things like, you know, New Kids on the Block and, you know, listening to our parents' music. But I remember that Christmas that the record came out, we asked for it, and I was so excited.
Yeah, I think around the same time, we also got Smashing Pumpkins' Siamese Dream as well. I think we were about 13.
What did you like about those albums, Siamese Dream and the REM album?
Well, I think we'd grown up listening to like a lot of like kids, like pop music aimed at kids or our parents' music. But I think, you know, Siamese Dream and Automatic for the People, there was kind of an edginess to those records, and they were aimed maybe a bit younger than our parents, but still felt like it was a bit mature for us too. So there's maybe it was sort of like flirting with music that was maybe a little bit too mature for us, but we didn't quite understand it necessarily 100%, but it felt like something an older sibling would listen to, so it made us cool to listen to it. We were like, yeah.
And do you still like those albums?
Mm-hmm. I mean, definitely, I feel like Smashing Pumpkins, those first few records, Pisces Iscariot, Siamese Dream, Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, those are still really significant pieces of music in my life. I don't know that I'm necessarily like going back to that music as often as I used to, but I still can put those records on and really, I don't know, almost like travel back in time and remember how impactful they were. I remember hearing Siamese Dream and thinking I had never heard music like that before. Like it felt like, I remember like feeling like it was really something significant and different compared to everything else I had heard in my life. And not very many, you know, albums are going to do that to a person over the course of their listening life, and that one did.
But do you think that has something to do, Will, with growing up and finding your own music?
Well, I definitely think that, you know, it was sort of like that period of time where, you know, we had been listening to what our parents liked or what was mainstream and on radio and that sort of thing. And that record happened to be my first sort of foray into discovering something new that wasn't what everybody else was listening to. So I don't know that that can really happen when you're an adult and you have accessibility to, you know, anything you want. It stopped. It's sort of like the novelty of anything. I remember when I got my first apartment, buying alcohol and putting it in the refrigerator, and it was like, I can just put alcohol in my own refrigerator now, like I'm an adult. And like, I think that's kind of like everything when you're a teenager. It's like, I can pick my own music and I can listen to it, and it doesn't have to be what anybody else likes. And that's something to do with, I think, being young and being a teenager.
Is it still a great album?
I think that Siamese Dream is a great album. Automatic for the People I haven't listened to in a long time, but I respect REM, you know, a lot. But definitely, I think, do you listen to Siamese Dream?
Oh yeah, no,
so
absolutely.
Such a good record.
I think that I'm actually probably guilty of probably listening to music that we grew up too much and not listening to
like new music.
enough
new
current
music.
music. Yeah, no, I think that they're great records. I mean, people back then, obviously, you know, anything sort of from the 90s back, you know, I think are great records because people were making records. They weren't just trying to make a single, you know. So I feel like there's a story in all of those first records that we bought that I still, you know, attached to.
Standout tracks?
I mean, I still think that Today is like one of the coolest songs. It just, I don't know, it really like sums up a whole sound and an arc, like the way that music in the 90s was like, could be very, very quiet and then could be very explosive. It's still, I think, one of the coolest videos, music videos I've ever seen. But there's so many good ones on there. Disarm is such a fantastic track. Mayonnaise was my favorite song off that record. That's what I remember.
Everybody Hurts. I mean, I think the record is all really good, but it came on in the mall the other day, and I like had a moment where I was like, I'm a teenager again.
Yeah.
90s music was so emotional. And I agree with Sarah, there's just so much, there's so much vulnerability, and the music just felt so organic. I like that music has moved away from feeling so organic again, but there was just something so raw and emotive, like, you know, about people back in that time.
And well, we speak about the early 90s, you were in your early teens. You started playing the guitar aged 15. Yeah, I was thinking.
Good work.
Yeah. Who gave you your first guitar?
We actually found our first guitar. It was my stepdad. He had been storing a bunch of stuff under the stairs in our basement, and we used to muck about in there, you know, dig around, play hide and go seek, whatever, and we found a guitar and started pulling it out and playing on it. And we were both musical, like we were in music in school, and we taken piano most of our lives, so it wasn't a stretch. It wasn't like, you know, we all of a sudden got into music. So we started both writing songs and messing around on the guitar, and our parents figured out that we were messing around with this guitar, and we asked if we could take guitar lessons, and we took like 2 lessons or something and grew tired of that, but we just kept playing other things, like writing songs, trying to sing together, that sort of thing. And I'd say over that first 6 months after we found that guitar, we really developed an interest in being in a band. It was the 90s, so everybody wanted to be in a band.
But when you played the piano, did you write your songs?
No. We never, up until the point where we had this guitar, we'd never really done much writing. I mean, you would sit at the piano and mess around, but the guitar, I think it represented, because it was the 90s, it was like, it represented like being in a band. Like nobody played piano, that wasn't cool, you know?
It's funny, don't you think in hindsight, because you played the piano?
I think that the reason why we didn't naturally start composing music on the piano was because for us, that it was about theory class, and we had to learn classical pieces, and you know there was this expectation.
It was so structured.
Yeah, and I never felt like, I didn't have a sense of how much I could love music all those years I was playing piano. It was something that I had said that I wanted to do, and so my mom would take us to piano lessons, but it was almost sort of like school, you know. Right. We had to do it. We had to learn scales, and I remember always dreading. I really liked my piano teacher. I liked talking to my piano teacher, but I always dreaded going there because I knew I had not practiced enough, or I couldn't ever. It wasn't natural for me. But I think that we had a natural tendency with guitar to immediately go to this place where, we didn't have to think about theory. Yeah. We didn't have to think about the structure of music. We just did what felt intuitive.
But once you started playing the guitar, did you, continue playing the piano too?
Yes, our parents were like mobsters. The deal was we were allowed to play guitar and take guitar lessons, but only if we still played piano. I think they were worried we were teenagers that we would give up piano after all these years of, I don't know what they thought, we were going to become like famous pianists or something, but so that was the deal. But then, once we started writing songs, I think our interest really did, like it was just so unbalanced. We were just so interested in the guitar, and I think it really excited our parents because we'd never spent that much time playing piano.
Yeah.
And almost immediately Sarah and I started composing and singing together and recording, and then we started making demos and selling them at school, and I think they just saw us so interested that they let us ditch out on piano. So we stopped playing piano probably about a year after we started playing guitar.
So they were actually pretty happy to see you.
They were like,
finally.
I think they were like, thank goodness they're actually excited by something other than their friends.
Okay. Well, fast forward now because we only have limited time. The album Heartthrob. Mm-hmm. There are 2 quotes that I don't know who of you said it, but about this album. We closed out our decade with Sainthood.
Mm-hmm.
When did you have this feeling that you closed out the decade?
I mean, we were turning 30 after we finished Sainthood. So for me, it was just I mean, quite literally, we had spent a decade from 20 to 30 playing music professionally. So it felt really natural to sort of have it be a natural bookend, I guess you could say. Like, and I think that stylistically, aesthetically, we wanted to change things up, and so there was like a, it felt like if we let Sainthood be kind of the last album of that era, then we could sort of start fresh with a new one.
But did you notice when you recorded Sainthood, or was it afterwards?
No, I don't think that we knew how we were going to feel at the end of Sainthood. I mean, I didn't know how I would feel at the end of Sainthood, and I didn't even really take into consideration, okay, we're going to tour this album for 2 years, and when we finish touring this album, I'll be turning 30. and I'll have all these feelings. And, you know, we sort of had to go through the experience of that album, I think, to realize that we wanted to do something different.
And what was the starting point then for this album? Did you talk about it with each other? Say, well, we've closed this decade, and what are we going to do now? Or?
We had some preliminary talks. Like, we'd probably been off the road 6 or 7 months, and we'd written a little bit, and we sat down and talked sort of about our goals. It had initially actually less to do with music and more just to do with, like, you know, looking at our career as a whole. You know, we'd done a sort of retrospective, like, acoustic sort of live concert and DVD package, and, you know, as Sara had said, it sort of did feel very much like the end of a decade. So we sort of looked at, what does the next 10 years look like? Where do we want to go? What kind of band do we want to be? What genre do we feel interested in, you know, being a part of?
So you spoke about 10 years?
Oh, yeah.
Forthcoming 10 years?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, we were making a DVD package looking back over the 10 years, and the narrative for that package was this idea we were looking back at our whole career. So it felt like a fresh start. And I think, you know, being in our 30s and having so much experience, we just felt like it was time to try something really different and really new. And we'd started to do that. Like, we were collaborating with dance artists. On Sainthood, we'd done multiple songs with no guitars on it. And, like, we'd started to move in the direction of something fresh, but we weren't sure what it was. And as we started to write Heartthrob, there was just so many tracks like Goodbye, Goodbye and Closer and Drove Me Wild that were really synth heavy. And it just seemed to be pointing us in the direction of making a much more pop, sort of, you know, 80s sounding record. And so we didn't talk about the music so much as we just talked about what we wanted to do with our lives. And it was like, let's tour bigger, like, rooms and go to more countries and try to get on radio and see how big we can make the project. So, and we never really talked like that before.
So you grew up.
We did. We were like, we're old.
Well, let's talk about the future. Well, the album is called Heartthrob. Why?
I think for us, like, we needed a title that could sort of be fairly broad. I think we were writing about very different things, and I liked that. I actually feel this way about a lot of the album titles that we've selected in the past too, that they're versatile, they can change, you know, they sort of can have multiple meanings without being beholden to one kind of idea or concept. For me, I personally loved the idea of sort of playing with the gender norms around male heartthrobs, and the idea that we're women and that we're sort of taking this word and we're sort of, it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, like we know that we're not the traditional idea of what a heartthrob is, but to so many of our fans we are. And then also this idea that it contrasts really well with this persona that we're kind of actually brokenhearted all the time. We're always being dumped and having all this rejection and whatever. And yet that pain has made us quite successful, and in a lot of people's eyes has made us their heartthrobs. So I really liked that it sort of was silly, but then it also was kind of like an interesting title to kind of deconstruct from a lot of different angles.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
I'd love to talk. Anything.
You know, we're like, blah, 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 blah.